So I'm Jeff, and this talk is essentially on being lazy and why I think everyone in here should try to be more lazy in their lives. So when you hear the word lazy, this is probably something along the lines of what you think of, right? And I think that's entirely unfortunate because lazy people, I think they understand something that a lot of us take for granted. And that's the fact that time is truly the most valuable resource we have. In fact, they value time so much that if you try to give a lazy person a job, no matter what you pay them, they're going to try to find an easier way to do it, or a way that where they don't have to spend as much time doing it, and they can spend their time doing, fun things. I think the classic example of this in that regard is Tom Sawyer trying to whitewash a fence. Instead of doing it himself, he kind of pawned it off on his friends. And there's good and bad to that. And as someone who's been lazy most of my life, there's always good and bad sides to laziness. And I think the best way to kind of illustrate that is to just share a little bit of my story with you. So it all started when I was 5 years old. My mom had a nickname for me, and Newtown Square was the town that we grew up in. And so I called her up the other day, and I said, how does a 5-year-old get this title? Like, what can a 5-year-old even do to earn, a nickname lazy? And apparently, whenever she told me to do chores, I'd always try to find the easiest way to do it instead of actually doing it. So she'd tell me to clean my room, and come back in a half an hour or whatever, and I'd still be sitting on my bed. And it used to drive her nuts because she'd always tell me, she'd be like, if you just did it, you'd be done by now. Well, me being stubborn and I don't know, I didn't buy it. Like, I always thought there was a better way. And that carried over to my schoolwork. So I remember doing spelling homework where you had to write, each spelling, you had to write spelling, you had to write your spelling words, 10 times. It was totally tedious, especially when you're a 7-year-old and, there's Super Nintendo, there's Legos. This is the last thing you want to be doing. So I would, kind of write all the spelling words like this because the muscle memory, writing the same letter over and over again, it was quicker, or so I thought. And this carried on to math class. Instead of doing the quadratic equation, which was a long formula in grade school, I thought it was easier to write a program to solve it for me, and it was great. I did almost no math homework until the teacher realized the entire class was doing the same thing. And then in college, I wasn't quite this bad, but there were definitely some stressful finals weeks. So if my entire academic career taught me one life lesson, it was that procrastination wastes a ton of time. And there's another side to that too. Working takes up a lot of time. It's time, especially if you don't love what you're doing. It's time spent doing stuff other than what you want to be doing. So once you have that realization, you can kind of discern good laziness and bad laziness. Good laziness being anything that reduces effort or the amount of time that you spend working. And bad laziness, just wasting time. And something interesting happens when you apply that to programming. Personally, kind of along the lines of the spelling homework, I have bash aliases for everything. Rather than typing 9 characters, including spaces, that's a waste of time, I just type 2. And this might seem like a ridiculous micro-optimization, and it totally is, but I'm okay with that. So just to give you an idea, if you do this over the long run, it adds up. So if you do this with your top 10 bash alias or top 10 commands that you're entering and stuff, I figure you can, over 10 years, you can save about a week or 5 days, 5 24-hour days, which if you think about it, that's a long time to be just typing in terminal commands. But that being said, you have to decide whether or not it's kind of worth that initial effort to be lazy. And laziness is great for processes. When you have repeatable tasks, projects, it kind of breaks down because it's a lot of overhead if you're only doing it a couple of times. But that being said, you can certainly be lazy within the context of a project. We had a project where we had to validate social security numbers, and I thought it would be fun to. It wasn't a production environment. It was at PDX Code Guild, so it was a classroom environment. I thought it would be a ton of fun to solve it with just one giant regular expression, and no JavaScript logic or anything, just regular expressions. So I wrote, kind of took the number line, and from 0 to 900,000 or whatever, and blocked off different sections of the numbers. Certain sections were acceptable, others were not. And based on that, I started writing this regular expression, and I quickly realized it was extremely tedious. And so basically, this is a Python script that I wrote to generate that regular expression for me. And this is the result. So had I tried to do that manually, that would have been a pain in the neck. And the point in showing you this is I really think laziness can, kind of take our programming abilities to the next level. Like, you can do some really cool stuff if you take a lazy approach. However, it's not always bad, it's not always good laziness. There's also the potential for bad laziness. And let me say this, we live in a really cool time. There's, almost completely self-driving cars, there's, self-programming thermostats and stuff like that. And to kind of quote Jurassic Park, we have to be aware of what we're doing before we just do it. Just because we can automate stuff, it doesn't mean we should. And about 2 months ago, I bought a bike. And the logic was, if I bought a bike, it would be enough exercise so that I could quit my gym. And in the long term, it would be cheaper to own a bike than it would be to pay for a gym membership. So I went online and went to cancel my gym membership and realized you can't do it online. And I think that's crazy because it's 2016, but they want you to mail this form in. And I'd recently been playing with an API that lets you send physical mail it's meant for like advertising and billing and stuff like that. And I really did not feel like leaving the house that day. So I canceled my gym membership with a curl command. Now, I definitely crossed some sort of line doing this. So I really think, no matter what we do, whatever we're automating, we really should be careful of what we do and kind of take a step back and see if we're crossing a line. Because this is just a gym membership. There's some serious stuff that's being automated right now. So I set up a website with some hilarious stories of lazy programmers that just take it to levels you couldn't even imagine. And speaking of which, I built this website today, so it's very basic. It's powered by CloudStitch, which, full disclosure, I do work for them, but it kind of ties in with laziness. You don't want to be, if there's a tool to do something, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, feedback, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on my website. So, thank you.